Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of your Daily 5. As always, I like to over-prepare, and so we have an action-packed long and short picks rather than have any particular theme, really using the real motion indicators which are available now on the stock charts, and I'm going to talk about that for a second at the end. I just went through and picked out what I thought was some of the more interesting longs and interesting shorts, and here is the list right here. So we're going to go through Viacom, Gogo, CommVault, Run, Vietnam, Nvidia, and two mentioned that I did on the weekly show, which is Dish and Microsoft. So as I said, always ambitious, and we'll talk a little bit about the ACP plugins when we're done. So let's get going. Okay, so let's start here with Viacom. Now, Viacom, what came on my radar from a fundamental standpoint, and not only was it changing phases to a more bullish phase, number one. Number two is that given the election season that we just had, a lot of the media companies were paid millions and millions and millions of dollars to promote political ads. And so we thought, gee, that's an interesting aspect that could add revenues to some of these companies. And so, as you know, this is network television. And so when we look at the chart here, and I will say we have skin in the game on this one, what you can see from a strictly technical standpoint here, using the blue line is the 50 and the green line is the 200, is a bullish phase in that the price is sitting above the 50 and the 50 is above the 200. Now, we are bouncing continually off this 50-day moving average, but given the market conditions and the tentativeness of the market right now on whether or not this rally could sustain, and assuming it can, it gives you a really unique opportunity to buy this against the 50-day moving average and know right away pretty much two closes under that you're wrong. And of course, where this can go from the upside, if we just take a little bit longer view of the last couple of years in Viacom, you can see going back that if we can get through these more recent highs right here, that we can actually start to see a move up closer to, first of all, where we were before the big pandemic crash, and that would be closer to around 35, which is not a bad little move for a stock that doesn't really trade all that actively on a given daily basis. Now, if we move on from there and go back to the one, oh, I do want to mention one other thing, so I'm going to show you is the real motion indicators. What's also interesting about Viacom is that this actually cleared the 50-day moving average before the price did, giving us a positive divergence. So waiting for that bullish phase to confirm is always a good idea. And as we look at the momentum here, although it's come off a little bit from the little peak high, we're not seeing any major divergence here. And unless we really start breaking down under these Bollinger Bands, then at this point now it looks good. Now, in terms of market leadership, it is still underperforming the spiders a little bit. It would have to cross over this red line. Okay, so moving on from there, we're going to take a look at Gogo. So Gogo is also an interesting stock. This came on our radar as a small cap growth stock. It has to do with, the technology has to do with aeronautics. And again, looking at this one, skin in the game, we have this moved over the 50-day moving average, over the 10, which is still under the 50, and of course over the 200, and you can see the positive slopes on both moving averages, and momentum starting to crease here on the 10. This, in terms of leadership, is outperforming the S&P, and we can see, though, that in terms of the momentum, interestingly enough, we have not quite cleared this 50-day moving average in the real motion indicators, which tells us that the momentum hasn't really gotten going. So in order to play this tight, at this point, the fact that it's holding the 50 with a risk probably somewhere around 9, between 9 and 950, as we're clearing this last little bit and this consolidation here, once we start to see this take out the 50-day moving average and the momentum, we should be able to see this go much, much higher. And we don't have the same kind of history here. Here was your all-time high right here. So that's another one to keep your eye on. And again, skin in the game for us. One we don't have skin in the game on, but we're very interested in at this point, is called CommVault Systems. This is a tech stock, but not in NASDAQ. This is a tech stock that's traded actually as a small cap growth stock. And what interests me about this is that we had this big, huge period of consolidation here, and now we haven't quite gotten back over this 45 level. But if we come down here and look, it is showing a little bit of market leadership. And look at the momentum. The momentum is not in a divergence, but it's good and strong. So at this point now, what we're looking at maybe is a move back over 45. And we would probably look at this as a risk maybe underneath 43. Not to take a big risk on this because it would either have to go or not. And where could it go? Well, right now we can see that all-time highs here is up at around 52 to 55. Now, if we move on to the next one, this is Run. This is something I've talked about a lot, particularly on the media, because I believe in the future of this stock. But after it sold off here, when the solar area got a little bit too ahead of itself, it's now under the 50. And so far on Friday here, it's having an inside day, sitting on the 10. But we have a good positive slope on the overhead 50, and we have a nice upward slope here on the 200. Not a market leader by any means. And again, showing more weakness here on the momentum. So we'd want to see this momentum start to pick up a little bit, clear this Bollinger Band. And at the same time, we don't necessarily say we have to wait for a phase change. Maybe what we would be considering at this point now is through 57, buying a half a position with a risk right under 52. And if we can get a confirmed phase change, adding to that position and then raising the risk up to around where our first entry point is. But keep your eye on this one because I do believe that it's a sleeping giant. And then finally, in terms of the first ones, we've got Vietnam. I've talked about Vietnam on this show many, many times on both the weekly show and this show. And again, great momentum here coming into this, consolidating. But what you can't see here is that right now it's sitting above the 200-week moving average for the first time since we had the breakdown pre-pandemic. So this too, after all this sideways action, now with a close over the 200-week, which would put it somewhere over this 1555 level, if it can actually hold up here, I would look to be potentially a buyer with a risk right under the 50-day moving average, anticipating that, again, slow mover, this can continue a next leg up. Now on the short side, we've got Nvidia. I know this is a hard one to swallow, hard pill to swallow, because usually at the holiday time, this thing does super well. But you have a nice double top here. Your momentum, look at it, has been declining underneath the moving averages. So here we have a divergence under the 50, under the 200, certainly not a market leader. And right now it has popped back over the 50. So I would simply wait for two closes under the 50-day moving average. And then I think you have a short opportunity and you can use that 50 as a risk. And if it breaks down under 500, we could see a pretty significant move down, maybe 450 next stop. Yes, this is counterintuitive to the holiday season, but on the other hand, it also is in line with what we're seeing here is a rotation out of some of these tech giants and more into the small caps. And then finally, the two bonus ones that I mentioned, I'm going to talk about real quick. One here is Dish from the long side. I mentioned this in the weekly video. Again, look at that positive divergence. Saw some buying coming in today. I mentioned yesterday that this was a buy through the high right here, which looks like it's at about 30, a little bit 30 and change. So it's moving up right now. You got a pretty clear risk here if it breaks back down under 29.95 or back under the 200. But this positive divergence was what I pointed out, as well as look at the market leadership here. And so this is doing very, very well today and should continue to do so. And Microsoft is going to be our last pick here from the short side. Again, covered yesterday in the StockCharts weekly. Negative divergence here. It's under the 50, under the 200 on the real motion, not leading at all. Another tech giant sitting above the 50-day moving average. If this breaks down again under 210, 211 and confirms on a caution phase, this might also turn out to be a great short. So finally, what I want to show you here is something I mentioned yesterday, which is the plugins. So if you go to the plugins and look at all the plugins here, here's our market leader. This name will be changed, leadership from Triple Play and Real Motion. What I wanted to add to this is if you go ahead and buy this, what you will be getting is all of our scanners that tell you which ones have come up on the real motion and which ones have come up on the leadership. If you will have an email to send, and then you will have access not only to the scanning and that, but also the training videos that come out every week. So it's not just an application, it's also recommendations and also education. Okay, that's it for now. You all have a great week. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.